Welcome back to Sprague's Homestead. I'm Nikki, and I'm going to show you how to make some canned fajita chicken. So the fajita flavored chicken is really handy to have on hand for like those quick nights that you just need something to make up a really quick taco. You can put them on taco salads. You can even eat it cold and use it in wraps. And what it is it's just going to be chunked up chicken that we go ahead and cook a little bit on the stove, and then add some seasonings to, jar up, and then put in some broth. Now, the reason that we go ahead and we cook it at least a little bit is so that it doesn't turn into one giant clump. What we want is it to kind of hold those chunks or those strips in shape. And so we need to go ahead and cook that first. Otherwise, if you just put it in raw pack, it turns into one big clump, and then it kind of pulls apart, and it doesn't really do what we're looking for it to do. Now, for seasoning, you can use your own homemade fajita seasoning if you have something you really, really like, as long as it doesn't have any thickeners. So that's like no cornstarch, no potato starch, no flour. I've seen some recipes with flour, which seem weird. So nothing that's got any thickeners in it. And then rather than use the full amount that you would usually use if you were just like making fajitas, you're going to cut that amount of seasoning down to about half. And the reason for that is when you can, it tends to intensify a lot of flavors, and we really don't want that to happen. Like, you don't want to just be eating a jar of flavored fajita mix, right? So for the longest time, I used a fajita mix that we really liked from Emergency Essentials. They don't make it anymore. At least that's what I've been told when I couldn't find it on their website. I'm now using this brand, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, but it's Badia, I believe. I got it on Amazon. Really good stuff. No thickeners on it that I can find. It's just garlic and onions, spices, including chili pepper, salt, and a little whatever to prevent caking. So it's got nothing that's really going to be a thickener. It smells amazing. And it really makes a really nice looking fajita chicken. Then you just need some chunks of chicken. I've got a whole bunch of chicken breast and some tenderloin, just cut into some narrow strips and some chunks. You need a hot pan and whatever you want to cover it with. You can use tomato juice if you want more of a tomatoey flavor. Fajitas don't always have a real tomatoey flavor, so I just use straight some chicken bouillon, not a whole lot, with a little bit of the seasoning actually mixed in with the bouillon in some water just to cover it. And the only reason I do that is to keep it nice and dry, or nice and hydrated, not dry. I hate dry chicken when you pull it out of a jar. And depending what you're doing with it, you might be able to drain the juice off and use it for something else. So, and it also saves the color, because sometimes it'll kind of gray out and turn colors on you when you can meat. And that's about it. So how this works out is usually roughly about a pound of meat makes a pint jar, give or take. So I have just under 5 pounds right here, so I expect to make about 5 pint jars. Could go 6 depending on how tight I want to pack. You can tell I didn't pack these terribly tight. But that's as tight as I like to go with it, because I don't need a ton of chicken. But that's entirely up to you on how tight you're going to pack it. So the first thing we're going to do is to heat up the pan and just start lightly browning and lightly cooking up our chicken. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pan on about a medium heat, about half a tablespoon or so of oil, and I'm just going to let that heat up a little bit. And that's just to keep it from sticking. This is a ceramic pan and very seldom does it stick, but you just never know. All right, and then because this is only about 5 pounds, I'm just going to use about half of it, make 2 batches, and that's because this is a pretty big pan. If I was using a smaller pan, I probably would not put as much meat into it, and that's pretty good. We don't want it like so over the top covered that they stick together too much when you're cooking them. And you can see this stuff is starting to cook up pretty good. If it clumps, just kind of separate them out a little bit. And the big thing is I want all of the pink to be cooked enough that it's not going to stick. So I really want everything to be white. or a little lightly browned if it wants to do that. But, okay, so once we've got it where it's pretty much white and pretty much at least cooked, I mean, you can still tell that it's not quite cooked through, and that's fine because the canning process is going to cook it all the way through, right? We're just trying to make sure it's cooked enough that it's not going to stick. So now we're going to add our seasoning in, and every single one of these seasonings are a little bit different. Some of them will just tell you to taste. The McCormick brand will tell you it's 1/4 of a cup to a pound, which is crazy high. This stuff I'm using about, remember I've got about 2.5 pounds in here, and I'm using a little bit over 1/8. This is a 1/4 scoop, but there's a 1/8 measurement in there. And I just want a little flavor on everything. Doesn't have to be terribly thick. Okay, and then just let that cook for just a couple of minutes just to kind of get it to kind of cook in there a little bit. All right, once you've got that cooked to wherever you want it to be, just go ahead and move it over to a bowl and start that process again until all of your chicken is cooked. Okay, so with our chicken all cooked, you can kind of see it even steaming there. It is now time to get everything else prepped and ready. So we can just go ahead and put a cover on the chicken and set it aside for right now. And you're going to go ahead and get your canner prepped and your jars and your lids. So you're going to want to follow your manufacturer's directions on your canner. Most canners have a little notch or a line or something on the inside of the canner that tells you how much water to put into it. So you're going to do that and going to go ahead and get the canner started and let it start heating. Wash all of your jars in hot soapy water and your lids. You don't necessarily have to, and because this is going to be a hot pack, I'm not going to keep my jars hot. I'm just going to go ahead and get them nice and clean and set them aside and get ready to fill them. With the lids that I'm using, they don't require simmering, so you don't have to worry about a pot of water and getting your lids warmed. Check the directions of the lids that you're using. Some brands, like the Golden Harvest and those kind of things, the Walmart brand, do require that light simmering to get them warm, to get them ready to use. A lot of the new ball anchor lids do not say that. They just say go ahead and wash them in hot soapy water and set them aside until you're ready to use them. And I have verified this with, at least with the Ball company, and Ball and Kerr are pretty much the same thing anymore. And that's what they said. Set it aside and just go ahead and use them, that they feel pretty confident in, that you don't have to go ahead and simmer them. So get your lids and jars cleaned, get your canner ready, and then we'll come back and start filling jars. All right, so once all your jars are clean, your canner is warmed up, you're just going to go ahead and fill your jars, leaving about 1 inch of head space. And like I said earlier, how tight you pack these is entirely up to you. Okay, and like any of your pressure canning stuff when you're dealing with meat, you're going to go for a 1 inch head space. So we just go ahead and ladle in our broth. And then if you have a debubbler tool, you can go through and try and get some of the bubbles out. If you don't, you can use a knife. All right, and then we just go in and check our headspace, about 1 inch. All right, and then I'm going to take a paper towel moistened with a little bit of vinegar and just wipe my jar lid, or my jar rims, because I got a little messy when I was filling. We just want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to get in the way of a good seal. And then, depending on your manufacturer directions, you're just going to put your lids on, put your ring, and tighten them down fingertip tight. Okay, then these are ready to go into the canner. Once your jars are in the canner, you're just going to follow your manufacturer's directions on how to proceed as far as venting and timing and all that good stuff. For the pints, we're going to do them for 75 minutes. Now, as far as your weight on your gauge, you're going to want to check with either the Ball book or the National Center for Home Preservation. I don't know why that's a tongue twister tonight, but it is. And adjust for your altitude. Now, for me personally, because I'm using the Presto Precise, it's actually going to handle that part for me. I don't have to do anything as far as adjusting the PSI. No weight gauge, no nothing here. I've just put in the time, and it's going to go ahead and do its thing, and it's going to tell me when to put my regulator on. So follow your manufacturer's directions on how to proceed from here, and we'll see you on the other side. There we are. So out of the 6 jars that I did have one fail. Turns out that I think my ring was a little dented and didn't give me a good seat down that I thought I had. So we just put that in the refrigerator, and we will use that for a meal in the next couple days. If you have any questions on this recipe, on the procedure, any of that kind of stuff, leave them down in the comments, or you can always send me an email at srhomestead@yahoo.com. And that is it for today from Sprecher Homestead. Happy canning and happy homesteading. We'll see you next time.